Okay, in this video, I'm going to show how we look at 1,000 officer complaints in a small department with 50 sworn officers. This is all fictitious data generated using a large language model, just showing the officer's name, badge number, the date of the complaint, and then a description of the complaint as it was filed by the complainant. And we want to look at that data. So the first thing to do is I can get it into an Excel file. And once I get it into Excel, select everything that is in the 1,000 rows. And if you're not familiar with this process, use the insert tab and insert table. So once you'll know you have a table because you have each one of the drop down filters, and it needs to be saved and auto save turned on. Once those things are accomplished, then Copilot becomes available. So there's a tab here too that's called Analyze Your Data, and you can just run this analysis and just see what it does. So it gives you a count by date, so the different complaints by date. You can insert that as a pivot table. It tells you that this particular officer has some outliers on these two dates. And it turns out a little later when I ask a question in Copilot, this is the officer with the most complaints. Again, you can insert all of these as pivot tables, and I'll do one of those as an example. So I'll insert this one about officer named Charles Lowe. So it inserts it to another sheet, gives you the date, the count by officer name, showing that he has 29 complaints, and it looks like he had 2 complaints on the 12th and the 15th of January of 2024. Again, this is just 1/4's worth of data. So some of the questions that were asked is, can I use Copilot to start looking across this data, to analyze it, to find anomalies and find bits of information I might not be able to find, like commonalities, etc. And so let's go to Copilot and ask some questions and see what Copilot can help us with. So one of the questions I wanted to ask Copilot was, are there any commonalities on Officer Lowe based on like the category of the complaint? All right, I'm asking it to add a column and categorize the complaints by type. So insert in column E. So I'm going to grab that, I'm going to insert that right here in column E. Okay, so by inserting that in column E, it pulled out and analyzed the data, and you'll notice it identified things like dismissive and inappropriate language, other, stop, arrest, etc. as the principal type of the category of the complaint. So now I will change the name of this column from column 1 to category. Category. So now I at least have that information. And then I can start doing some further analysis. So which officer had the most complaints? Charles Lowe, he had 29. Again, I can add that to another sheet, identifying him and basically putting in a pivot table. Let's ask what category complaints by count were against Officer Lowe. So against Officer Lowe, he had 8 for other, 6 for a stop, 5 for being dismissive, 5 for bad language, 4 for a search, and 1 where there was an arrest. So again, you just start being able to dive into this category to look for common themes, patterns of misconduct. So when you're thinking about analyzing all of your complaint data and trying to understand if it's, a person having a bad day, or is it some sort of systemic problem, or maybe it's a problem with your training regimen. If it looks like it's not just one officer, but it's all officers, then maybe you need to go back and look at your training to understand where it is maybe that you're missing something in training that people just aren't quite getting, or maybe there needs to be some retraining to reemphasize a particular policy. So let's look at the number of officers that there was a complaint based on language. And I can use just natural, the way I would ask a question. How many officers used bad language? So officer name for category, there's distinct count of 47 officers. So you got 50 officers in your force. And out of those 50 officers, 47 of them have had complaints for poor language. Just maybe time to pull everybody in and just say, hey, I know it's a tough job. I know people can be aggressive. I know that you can have a bad day, but a little courtesy and a little politeness go a long ways. If that in fact is your policy. And oftentimes language and the way that people perceive it can be the thing that ramps up a situation that didn't need to be escalated necessarily. So those are just some ways that you can do things. And you can, like I said, you can add these to new sheets. So we can just go back to where we started. We can start with Officer Lowe. He's the first one. Then we can go to his count there. We could have added that to a new sheet. We get down to our last one, distinctive officers, the count of officers that used poor language. So there was distinctly 47 different officers. There was a complaint about the way they use language. So just an idea about how you could look across your data, assuming that your complaints come in a way that you could get them into a structured table. If they come in on a recorded line, or if people file complaints, as long as we can put the data in some common format. Doesn't have to be Excel. It could have all been in Word documents or PDFs, and we could have done some analysis that way as well. We just happen to be able to create 1,000 rows of this, assuming that they're coming in some structured format. And you can see we can quickly dive in and start to understand common themes and patterns across the data, even though this is a rather small data set of 1,000 complaints over a 3-month time period.